So, Paul, what do you make of the undefeated Chiefs?
Man, it's so hard to put a finger on them because, like, Mahomes hasn't been great. He's been good enough for them to win, and he always makes the big play when they need it. I mean, he's throwing uncharacteristic interceptions. He's not really putting up big numbers, but then somehow, some way, the Chiefs defense always keeps him in it, and they make the plays down the stretch to win the ball game. But I'm just like, I don't know how they're undefeated, to be honest. I mean, I haven't seen them play one great game yet. But somehow, some way, they find a way to win. But that's the mark of a great team. Like we say all the time, you cannot play well and find ways to win. That's just the mark of a great team. To me, this is his most vulnerable team. And this is the first time they've been 6-0 under Mahomes. I think this is the most vulnerable team right now. Like, they're 6-0 to me, but I see about 2 or 3 teams that look better than them. Like Baltimore looks amazing right now. The last 2 or 3 weeks, and Keys always got them up there on his big list, and rightfully so. Detroit looks so, oh my goodness, Detroit look like world beaters right now. But this is Patrick Mahomes, and it's hard to bet against him.
Keyshawn, what do you make of the undefeated?
We can do it so many different ways. They're still the best team in the National Football League. They've yet to lose. They still now, I dropped them because of the bye, whatever. They'll be number one again, and depending on what, even if Baltimore just shellacked Tampa Bay, they'll be right back at the number one spot in the big list.
Jeez.
But you got to think, though, when you talk about they just find a way to win, they're never out of a game. Everything is always tight and close. They're never out of game. You don't see them in double-digit deficits in the late fourth quarter where it's to the point where they down by 17. No, it's not. They're not going to let it get to that point. They're just not going to do it. They find different ways to win. They rushed for 184 yards and 4 touchdowns yesterday. Okay, Patrick Mahomes threw for about $150. Okay, what's wrong with that? What we want Patrick Mahomes to do, we want him to throw for twice as much.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what we want.
We always said this is the baby goat.
But I don't need to see that. Because when he needed to run the football and run the dude over to get into the end zone, guess what he did? He ran him over into the end zone, touchdown. And so they know how to win so many different ways, dog. That's just, they've never, in the 3 Super Bowls that they won, just think about that. The 3 that they won, they never ran away with the Super Bowls. They all came down to like 1-possession games. And they took care of business when it mattered the most. When it mattered the most. That's all that matters.
You know, we're not saying his name enough this year, but Andy Reid is brilliant. And they are the perfect example of next man up. He is able to put players that would otherwise be on other teams struggling in positions to contribute almost immediately and be effective almost immediately. He is constantly but there's so much that goes into it. I mean, this is what happens when you have a winning culture. This is what happens when you have accountability. This is what happens when you have expectations and standards in the system and everyone's buying into what's going on and you have leadership that reflects that. It doesn't, to me, they're super dangerous. I don't think this is their most vulnerable. I think last year was their most vulnerable. What's crazy about this year, and I don't think they're going to go undefeated. Like I don't think that's even an aspiration.
Oh no,
people. I mean, maybe, but if they don't, I don't think that's a reflection of like how good they are. They find ways to win. They find ways to win and dismantle their opponent. It doesn't have to be for 350 yards. It doesn't have to be spectacular. They make other teams look bad, take advantage of your mistakes, and then they do what's necessary.
Yeah, they just pulling guys off the street like, hey, you want to come back over here and play? Hey, they lost their running back. They lost their number 1 wide receiver. They just plug and play. That's why I say they're vulnerable.
But like, they went and got 2 guys. They went and got 2 guys
off the street.
Well, they're off the street because they didn't have jobs at
on
the
the
time.
couch.
But Kareem Hunt's been in the system before.
Yeah, for sure.
He was able to grow and mature. The reason that they didn't want to deal with him because he was young, man. He had some issues that they didn't want in Kansas City. They came to him and they said, hey, man,
developing their culture.
Are you ready to get back in and be a real football player without those issues? He said, yeah, you give me this opportunity and I'm going to show you. So far, so good. Juju Smith-Schuster, I screw his name up all the time because I know him as Juju Smith. got let go by by New England, but they didn't not want him. They just didn't want to pay him what the other teams and free agents was going to pay. So as soon as they got an opportunity to grab him, they said, okay, Nico Hartman, come on back, man. We got you. So those guys can play.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? In the system, they were not world beaters 3 years ago anyway. They were just solid players when they was with them. They were not world beaters, you know? And so now you get them, you get familiarity, you plug them in, they know what to do, they're not going to make the mistakes. They get it, like you said, the culture, they understand it. Plus the 2-3 main guys are still there. 3-4 really, if you count Chris Jones, those 4 main people are there, so you know what you're walking into.
Mm-hmm.
They just keep finding ways. Well, let's talk about the banged-up Niners. Brock Purdy had the worst passer rating of any start in his career. Without many of his key weapons, Deebo Samuel only played 4 snaps. Brandon Ayuk was knocked out of the game in the second quarter and will now miss the rest of the season with an ACL injury. And Christian McCaffrey still isn't ready to return. Rough day yesterday for the Niners, and obviously more bad news as they confirmed that Ayuk is out. So how bad was this loss for Brock Purdy, Keyshawn?
How bad was the loss for Brock Purdy? Well, here's what I remember saying, and I think you do too, Joey and Paul. Said last week, if the 49ers are to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, he's got to be the best player on the field. Well, he was the worst player on the field. He was the worst player on the field. This was his worst game that I've seen him play as a professional football player. And I'm not just talking about the interceptions, the overthrows. I'm not talking about those things. I'm just talking about his command of the huddle from start to finish. It looked like he was pressing. It was too big of a moment. That sounds crazy. The 7th game of the regular season is too big of a moment when you just played in the Super Bowl. Doesn't that sound weird? But to me, when I watched him, Joy and Paul, it felt as though this moment was just too big for him. There were some things that he wasn't doing right. You could see it on Kyle Shanahan's face that things were just not clicking. Like it wasn't, like he turned back into the Mr. Irrelevant pumpkin that everybody so hoped that he would be when they were knocking him early in his career. And so do I think he's going to bounce back at some point in time? Yes. I think he will bounce back. But that game, it was a lot riding on it just to beat the Chiefs. And I know a lot of us talking heads probably felt like it's just a regular season. It didn't really mean anything. No, it meant a lot. Because if you beat the Kansas City Chiefs, you know you can beat them. So you went into it pressing. You don't think Kyle Shanahan was up all night on Saturday trying to figure out, oh, my God, I need to call this play if this happens, that. Of course he was. He may never admit it. Those players was pressing out on that football field.
This was a tough loss for Brock Purdy, not just because it was against the Chiefs, but, yeah, like, you got to be able to step up when your players are out. Man. If you're in that conversation with the other superstars in the league, even if it is the Kansas City Chiefs, it shouldn't look like this.
No.
It just shouldn't. And I don't think it's the end of his career. I don't think he's a bad player. But the questions about Brock Purdy are, is he able to perform at the highest level when his big dogs are not out there?
Right.
It's in question. Is it just because of Kyle Shanahan? It's in question. We know what things look like when everyone is out there and available. We know what it looks like when things are clicking. But what do you do when they're not? And this is the Kansas City Chiefs. They're the team that has kept you from winning a Super Bowl. And the question of, you know, are you a system guy, or are you a guy that's just benefiting from all the talent around you? Or are you somebody who can make lemonade out of lemons? Like, that, I think that question still remains, because when you have a superstars, or you watch, when you pass the eye test, wasn't that what you make lemonade out of?
Yeah, I'm just saying, of course he can make lemonade. I was just thinking.
Oh. Well, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade.
You gonna make lemonade
or you just sit there with lemons. I don't really understand this phrase. I'm just saying. Can you make something happen when things go wrong?
Yeah.
Right? Limeade, lemonade.
No, like, you can't make limeade with lemons. The point is, who is he as a player? Is he somebody who's going to go out there and put the team on his back and go win a game? Because we're sitting here talking about...
I think he can.
I think he can, too.
I think he did. Against Seattle, he did.
The big game, though.
But Seattle is not the Kansas City Chiefs.
No, this is his biggest obstacle.
And that's why it was a lot riding on. That's why I said that pressure, though. That pressure...
I mean, this man played in the Super Bowl. What kind of pressure are you telling me there is in a regular season game?
Because I haven't beaten them.
Yeah,
but the stress that comes. Think about when you could never beat the Lakers. Just think about
I
that.
don't remember those days.
You know what I'm saying, though, man. Oh, whatever, Paul. You know what I'm saying. But
Was there a team that you struggled with?
Yeah, for sure. I don't
It wasn't
think
the Lakers?
No, my first 10 years in the league, I don't think until my 10th year in the league, we lost to San Antonio every
So
time.
think about you couldn't beat Duncan in them. Every time you played them, it's like, man, we can't even beat these dudes. We can't beat them. It's stress. And then that stress trickles down to the coaching staff. And you looking at the coaching staff, and they look worried and scared. It happens. And if you beat them in the regular season, that pressure, that tension goes away slightly.
But you've been there before. Like,
You haven't. Every time they play you, they wax you in the regular season.
No, but like winning is stressful. It's a burden. Like, you know this, Keyshawn. Winning is stressful.
Oh, of course.
You've been in stressful
Coming here and working, but you enjoy every day is stressful.
No, but it is. This was the one, for the first time in his career, he looked like the last pick in the draft. For the first time.
Because of the pressure that Mahomes and Andy Reid and the gym
I don't know if it's just about the pressure. Like, He didn't always play like this against Kansas City. And again, we keep talking about how Kansas City hasn't even been spectacular.
Yeah.
Like,
it's the red, it's the Casey on the side, it's Chris Jones, it's that number 15.
But if you are a great player, you have to be able to overcome that. If you are a great player,
if I can't ever beat you, no matter how great I am, it's not just me.
So we're just submitting that he's never going to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, and that's okay?
No, he's going to have to at some point. Having never beaten the Philadelphia Eagles till we beat the Philadelphia Eagles, every time we walked into the vet, it was stress.
Well,
when they came to us in Tampa, Raymond James, it was stress till we finally cracked their skulls.
But Kansas City aside, what do they do moving forward?
Well, they got to get healthy first.
Because they are not healthy. They are missing guys for the season now. They are not healthy. They don't have Christian McCaffrey back. They just lost Brandon Ayuk. Juwan Jennings is hurt. Debo had an accident. He'll likely be back in an illness. But you don't have a guarantee that you're going to have all your guys out there they've got a big game coming up.
And the problem is they might be in a little bit of trouble. Now, obviously, they got the Dallas Cowboys coming in, which whatever that means, Dallas could take advantage of them by not having
That's no
the
longer
players.
an easy win for San Francisco.
It doesn't feel that way.
Right.
It just depends on what Dallas's mindset is coming into San Francisco. But they got to get healthy if they want to make the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, it's going to be because they win the division. If they don't win the division, I don't think they get in.
Nope.
Because it's just, you could just see it. Debo said it earlier in the year. This is either we going to do it now because the window's going to close on us. And you can slowly see it, guys, doing like this.
Yeah, and it usually comes down to injuries when you're talking about these teams that go on runs year after year.
Purdy, he didn't look like a $50 million QB at all.
Depending on, let's say San Francisco doesn't make the playoffs, which in my opinion, I don't think they will. Now when I look at the standings and where they're at and them dealing with injuries, what type of contract will Purdy demand?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's sort of the question that's looming over this year. And when you have games like this where guys get injured and you're playing against a really great team, but a team that isn't playing at the highest level that we think they can play at, and this is how you look, those are the questions that will pop up. Now, Brock Purdy is still going to get paid, obviously, but this is the question. When you pay your franchise quarterback, you're not able to pay everyone else. How can you perform when you don't have everyone out there? Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.